Do you know what's even more uncalled for? That I'm going to leave it
Oh
there and
no.
I'm going to bring Will on and I'm just going to let that hang there after taking a shot at you.
Well, Will doesn't know how old I am, but God.
No, he doesn't. So I've got the founding editor former of Deadspin, Will. I don't understand how you find time to write books with all of the things that you are doing out there. We prep for the interview, and so I was like, oh, okay, I'll go and see what's going on, and then I come across a page where you're on like every media outlet out there every day of the week. And then you're being rated by Room Rater in the process as it goes along. I thought I was busy. I'm exhausted seeing this all. When do you have time to write books?
To be fair, I'm just about done with the next one. I just need to cut this call a little short. Give me like 5 minutes, and I'll come back and we'll chat a second. No, I'm happy to. I love making stuff. This is the fun stuff.
Can we do the forward right now?
Yeah, exactly. It starts with it was the best of times, the worst of times. We'll figure out the rest after that. This is the fun stuff. I spent a long time writing where no one was reading me and no one was paying me to have nobody read me. So the idea that I get to do stuff now, I just try to take full advantage of it.
So your fifth book out this week, published by HarperCollins. How lucky. I saw that you were able to take over the HarperCollins Twitter feed for an hour. I saw Stephen King rave. It was a fantastic novel and a retweet. What's the response been and what's this been for you?
Yeah, it's been new. Obviously, I'm more from the sports world, and it was certainly annoying to my agent when I was like, "Hey, I wrote a book that has nothing to do with sports and it's completely off-brand." He's like, "Great, awesome. They're going to make my life so much easier." But certainly, when the Stephen King thing was really exciting. I don't actually know Stephen King, and I've never met him. I've never met him, but someone got him the book. And the thing about Stephen King that's kind of amazing is, obviously he's a great writer, but for a lot of people, Stephen King, I'm from Central Illinois, and people, as much as I would like more people in Central Illinois to read novels all the time, it doesn't happen. Right? It's hard to get them. They're not going to read mine. They're not going to read like an average one lying around. But Stephen King, to a lot of people, represents not just like a great writer, but like books. Like he is that, so to have Stephen King come across a book like that, it's been very exciting, but this is still so new to me that I'm not I didn't go to creative, didn't get an MFA or creative writing school and like that. I just wanted to write a book. I've been very fortunate that people have been happy for it, but I'm still going to keep my day job. I'm going to keep writing sports. I love sports too much to not keep writing about sports.
It doesn't matter what you write about. If you're a writer and a good writer, you learn about your subject. We know from reading your stuff about sports, you learn about the subjects that you're writing about. With this book, the main character has spinal muscular atrophy. And you spent months researching and interviewing families. What was it like to do that? And what have you taken from that?
Yeah, the reason the initial inspiration is because my son's best friend actually has SMA. There's a character in the book, the main character in the book, and his best friend their parents discover when they're like 1 year old, which is basically what happened with our family. So I had somewhat of an in. But what was interesting is, again, that's where, like me being a journalist, I just have to talk to a lot of people. And the great thing about this is I can come in from the beginning and say, listen, I'm going to write from the perspective of a character that has SMA. Now, I do not have SMA, so can you imagine how many things I'm going to get wrong? Like across the board, I'm going to get so many things wrong. So, like, I'm asking you, and they were so great, they're so gracious with their time and so eager to have like kind of this voice told correctly, that they just corrected the many, many mistakes that I made throughout this process. And to me, that's where the journalism comes in for this. Like, this is a work of fiction, but to me, this was something that I had to get right. And so, on one hand, I was moved by so many of the stories of the people I talked to. On the other hand, and I think this comes across with Daniel and the main character. He's like, nobody likes it. Do you like it when someone comes to you and says, "Oh, good for you. You're so brave." Good, like no one wants to hear that. They just want to live their life, And so, to me, that's part of Daniel's perspective. Is people like he really does not like being kind of infantilized like that. He's just a normal person like everybody else is, and keeps getting frustrated by everyone being like, "Oh, good for you. I'm proud for you to be able to do that." Like, how annoying would that be on a daily basis to every time you do something, people congratulate you for like crossing the street? And I think that's a perspective that I got from a lot of people that I talked about. It's like and again, Daniel has SMA, but the book is not about SMA. It's about Daniel who has SMA. And I think to me, it's just getting those little details right. I feel smarter because of it, but again, I do not have SMA. So by nature, I'm never going to get it exactly. I'm never going to understand it the way that they understand it. But certainly people were very gracious with me for giving me the time to let me talk to them and frankly, letting me listen to them.
As much as it's a book of fiction, it seems like kind of an education for people. What should they expect to get out of reading this one?
My initial idea for the book was, to be honest, it's been kind of I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the last year and maybe the last even few years have certainly been a stressful time for a lot of people, one way or the other. I think that people have it's been hard, particularly in the last year, to feel like always that people are great and people are inherently good. And one of the things that Daniel really truly believes, which I think is even more impressive because of all he and his body have gone through, he believes that people are good. He has a job where his job is to answer. He's a social media coordinator for a regional airline, which is to say he gets yelled at people on Twitter all day for their planes being late. And he still has this very positive attitude about the world and believes that people are inherently good, and that we get sometimes lost in the world of the internet and this polarizing climate that we all have, that we don't chronicle and don't really notice just the small kindnesses that happen on a pretty regular everyday basis. But Daniel, because he can't speak and because generally people try not to look at him, or he tends to notice so many things. And one of the things I think is inspiring about Daniel and inspiring to a lot of people I talk to is he sees people in the way that they actually are and thinks that they're good. And I think that that's hopefully a message that I think hopefully will resonate with people, particularly as we kind of go back out into the world a little bit and start interacting with one another again. Hopefully that I want people to feel like this is a mystery and there's suspense and hopefully it's funny, but I really want people to feel good. I wanted to put some good into the world with the book, and I don't know, hopefully it's done that.
You talk about trying to find the good. Jason and I do this show that we try to talk about the good in sports and the inherently good things that you see in sports or that you don't see that are behind the scenes. You've covered sports for a long time now. When you write the stories that you've written and and break the stories that you've broke, does that jade you, or have you been able to come out of it and still see the inherently good that sports can do?
Yeah, I think I have an advantage in that I cover sports, and I certainly interview people, and I certainly, try to keep track of what's going on. But I try not to get too close, which is to say, I go to more games as a fan than I do as a media member, and I think that is really important. I remember even when I started Deadspin back all those years ago, the fundamental thing that I told myself, because I had actually chosen in college, I wanted to be a writer, and I was like, okay, well, I really love sports. Let's see if I want to be a sports writer. And then I saw how miserable everyone that I knew that had made a career out of being a sports writer, how miserable they all seemed to be. And I thought, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but it's not going to be that. So kind of the deal that I made with myself when I started Deadspin is you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have fun writing about sports. But if there's ever a time where I get offered tickets to a game and I go, oh no, thank you, I can't even think about sports right now, I'll quit. That's not the angle I want. I love sports. I can't, and particularly I have to say, I'm curious about other people's thoughts about this as they go out into the world after the pandemic of the last year. I'm fully vaccinated, and I was in New York, and I went to a Yankees game. And I have to tell you, first off, it's great because there's just fewer people there. So the odds of running into a jerk are slashed dramatically when you're particularly for a Yankees game. But also, the idea of being at a game, I'm just seeing it through these new eyes now of what's been deprived, what I've missed, what I haven't been able to have. And it's reminded me that sports are good. Sports, I know that we get ugly. It's ugly, and if you go on Twitter, it feels like everybody's yelling at each other all the time. But when you go to a game, I mean, you're just there, and it's you see these incredible athletic achievements, and there's all your own history that you bring to it, and it's just, it really just it almost makes me emotional to think about how much I've missed sports and being at a game. So yeah, if I lose that, I don't think I'll be a very good sports writer, because to me, I think a large part of my work is about certainly some of the bad things that happen in sports, but really the idea that there's this wonderful thing that exists that actually seems really important at the time, but doesn't really matter, but connects to our life in a larger way. I mean, I love sports and have always loved sports. And so if there's a moment where I start to not like it, or I start to be too jaded about it, maybe I need to go cover something more fulfilling and hopeful, like politics or something. I don't know.
I'll talk to you about that.
Like
you don't want to.
Yeah, never mind.
Want to get into that,
probably not good. Yeah,
but
that's the thing. So that's what I love about it.
You talk about looking at sports through new eyes, and for me, I actually ended up going and buying your fourth book, Are We Winning? Because I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my 4-year-old is just now starting to get into sports. And so that book spoke to me about the things and the lessons you can learn and communicate through sports. I was joking with my co-host Jeff the other day. My son, I tried to explain to him why it was okay for somebody to steal a base, because he said, "That's not nice, Daddy. We shouldn't steal things." And so to see it through different eyes, your book there relates to me. Can you talk, before we have to let you go, about the relationship of sports with parents?
Yeah, I wrote that book actually before I was a parent. It's actually more about my relationship with my own father, who now I feel so fortunate because now my father is 11 years later not only still around, he lives here in Georgia and gets to watch baseball with his grandson, who has his game and loves the Cardinals as much as he does. And so to be able to have that, to have my son bound upstairs at 6 o'clock in the morning, saying, wanting to grab my phone to find out if his team won, and to have that experience is something that already, as Are We Winning is kind of about the idea that sports is really like a gateway or a vessel to talk about things that maybe are difficult to talk without that kind of vessel and without that gateway. And I think that in families, that is such an important thing. I mean, I know this is a very kind of City Slickers movie kind of idea, but there have been times we all have difficult relationships with our parents sometimes. And to have that connection of sports gives you like a default place to go when you're maybe struggling otherwise. And to have that connection, the idea that my grandfather, who passed away 30 years ago, I know what he was doing on the day that Ozzie Smith hit the home run in the 1985 NLCS, because I know what I was doing. And that connection through generations, to me, it's one of the great things that sports does. Sports does it almost accidentally, but I'll close on this. Someday, look at the Philadelphia Phillies. The Philadelphia Phillies, everyone that plays for the Phillies, everyone that owns the Phillies, everyone that works for the Phillies, everyone someday is no longer going to be involved with the Phillies. But the fans are going to be there forever. The fans are going to be there forever. They will be there all the way through. And to me, there's a constant and really the primary reason that sports should exist in the first place.
Will Leitch, we could talk with you all day. I would love to hopefully have you back on again to talk more. The book is How Lucky. Tell us where people can get it.
Yeah, it's wherever books are sold. Amazon. I always encourage people to get it from their local indie bookstores. Independent bookstores have had a very difficult time during the pandemic, so I encourage everyone to buy books from there. But if you buy it from Amazon, I will not scold you. Please, all means, buy the book from wherever it's easier for you to do so. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for the time. We really enjoyed it. We look forward to your next writing.
Of course, my pleasure. Please holler anytime and have a great weekend.